Hello and welcome to episode 11 of this Inspire 2020 Visionary Leader Series. I'm delighted to be joined today by Peter Csathy. Peter, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you, Simon?
I'm good. It's lovely and warm over here in Ireland. So Peter, you're the founder and chairman of CREATV Media. You're internationally recognized media, music, entertainment, tech, futurist. I know you're an accomplished deal maker. You've written a couple of books, I think Viral Media and Fearless Media. You're a speaker, advisor, board mentor. And I know you've just set up, and we just spoke about it before, your new creative university, which we'll talk about in a second. But
yes,
so a lot of things there, and it's great to chat to you. So maybe if you can just give the listeners and viewers just an overview in a few minutes of you, your background, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, happy to do it, Simon. Happy to do it. So even from the intro, you can tell that my career has been a little bit non-linear.
Yep.
And that's by, to a certain extent, by design. And so I began as I was always focused as a young kid in the media and entertainment and music world. That was very interesting to me.
Yeah.
But I was in the Midwest, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is sadly in the news for different reasons today. But out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, with absolutely no connections in the business. So like how to get into it. And I went to law school, and not to be a lawyer, but ultimately I felt that might be an interesting way to get into the business. Started off in Los Angeles as an entertainment lawyer at an entertainment firm. Okay. And then ultimately I broke into kind of, just by sheer tenacity, broke into the motion picture business and started to work as a young lawyer first at Universal Studios. And that was in the motion picture group. Ultimately, I became a deal guy, which was more of a business person, not a lawyer. Yeah. And I worked with New Line Cinema. Then I ultimately went back to Universal, but in a very different sort of mode. Yeah. There, I started to do major media and entertainment M&A and joint ventures with a lot of international on top of it. And so I negotiated deals from $1 to multi-billion-dollar international joint ventures. Yeah. Universal Studios Japan was my biggest deal. It was a couple $billion-dollar project. Okay. And then after a number of years in the business, that's when the internet really started breaking and becoming a very commercial thing. This was in the 2000, right about 2000. And I'm an entrepreneurial guy, and so I wanted to get into that world. And that got me into becoming a serial entrepreneur, where I built, ran, sold a number of digital, very different media and entertainment, digitally driven companies. Yep. Probably the best known was a company called Music Match, which was essentially Spotify before Spotify. Yep. And we were the first, we essentially invented and negotiated the first label licenses for on-demand streaming, as an example. Okay. When nobody believed in streaming back in 2002, 3, 4. Yeah. And then I built and ran another company called SiteSpeed and sold that one to Logitech, and that was video chat before FaceTime, before Skype video, before Zoom video. Yeah. And so that was nice. And then I ran another company in the video space, and then ultimately I had done that. Yeah, and I wanted to change to become more of a mentor, an advisor, a deal guy. Yeah. And that led me to founding CREATV Media, which is very much a very personal business with a small team by design, where I essentially have 3 pieces of my business. Okay. You mentioned a couple of things on the first piece, which is thought leadership. Yeah. So I'm an author, I'm a speaker. I try to stay ahead of the curve in terms of where the world is going in media entertainment, largely driven by tech. And that's because I was on both the traditional media side as well as the tech-driven media side. So that's about a third of my business. Yeah. Third of my business is I try to identify companies that are doing really cool things, innovating in the media and entertainment world. And that can be in the video space, music, immersive, so VR, AR, esports. And I work with a small handful of companies as a board member or an advisor to them to bring in as many tools as I can to help them succeed. Yeah. And then the final piece you mentioned, I'm a deal guy. So about a third of my business is working on M&A transactions that I identify and help facilitate. Yeah. So a big part of that business is I'm now heavily involved in music publishing acquisitions, publishing rights, because content is king like never before. So I represent money out there and businesses that are looking to acquire great catalogs from iconic artists. And so in the past year or so, I've closed a deal for the band Boston, More Than a Feeling, Air Supply, Count Basie, and I have a number of other ones that are in place. So that's a broad overview of what brought me to this place. And like I said, I just want to bring it back to, because maybe it's inspiring to some people. It's not for the faint of heart to have a kind of a non-linear sort of career. But it's been incredibly satisfying because I've touched a lot of different areas of the business. It keeps me really fresh and excited.
No, that all resonates with me. And we connected about 3 years ago because I was writing a couple of books about deal making and deal closing. And that was, so my career has been similar to yours, but different industries. I started life as a commercial lawyer. I was a technology lawyer. I was the first legal counsel for Dell over here in UK Ireland. I worked for Xilinx, a semiconductor company. I commuted to California, Los Gatos for a couple of years. Then at 39, I decided to change completely. We moved to Australia. I ended up becoming a CEO of an American sort of small conglomerate doing all sorts of different things. And then 8 years ago, I then decided to do my own stuff, which is around a bit like you, sort of giving back. And so coaching, mentoring, consulting, facilitating, lecturing. And then, but it's interesting that, so mine has never been linear, but it's funny how we can get to this point. And so you mentioned, we'll talk about it now, okay, the Creative University. And the reason I mention it now is that one of my favorite things, I lecture in American college here. These are third, fourth year undergraduates, right? And I lecture in the art of negotiating, right? And I'm passionate about giving back. So tell us about Creative University.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the things I like mentoring, just like you mentioned, that's very satisfying. And I think when you get to, I've been fortunate, you've been fortunate. So we've, along the way, we've had people who have championed us, and that helped us get to satisfying places in our lives, and satisfying in, myriad different ways that are personal to very different people. So as I look back, I obviously, like I said, I didn't have any connections into the business. It was just, I was fortunate to find a way. But there are a lot of people who, a lot of young people who are as excited as we are about the business, but they don't know really where to begin, nor do they have the resources available to them. And they may not be living in London or New York City or Los Angeles, which are kind of the hubs of that. So where do they go? And then there are some daunting forces out there. Let's face it. We can't forget that we're in the midst of a pandemic. We can't forget what's happening now, at least in my country, which is insane. And then we can't forget the economics that result from all that. So young people already face challenges getting into any business. And then the media and entertainment business is notoriously difficult to break into. So as I reflected upon that and what drives me, that's what led me to create Creative University, which is just launching literally just now. And if you go to the creative.media website, and then you'll see a tab that says Creative University. This is meant exclusively for students. So exclusively for college, grad students, high school students who are interested in careers in media, entertainment, and tech. And it's a hub of resources for them, including live Q&As with me, with people like you, with experts in the business, because I have a deep Rolodex now, which is exciting because I've touched all these different areas, bring people in to share their expertise, and all of it is for free. All of it's for free. It's just an industry give back. And so it's organic to a certain extent, where it ultimately goes. But the point is to be there, to inspire, to give opportunities for. And that may mean internships too. So again, Creative, I'm sure, Simon, you can share the website just so people can see that.
Absolutely.
And then I want to touch about one thing, because it kind of leads into some of the things we talked. You mentioned that you worked at Dell as General counsel, I think you said?
I was general counsel for UK and Ireland, home, small, medium business, which is a mouthful, but it was a $5 billion business. I mean, it was a big business, you know, UK.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Dell is very near and dear to me.
Yeah.
And for a couple of reasons. So when I worked at Music Match, Dell was one, which was this music software and streaming service.
Yeah.
Dell was our biggest partner, and we were bundled in on every Dell computer at the time. And so we were the music service for Dell at the time. So it was Dell Music powered by Music Match.
Yeah.
But here's a lesson that I think is important for anybody in business, particularly maybe for the young people, where the person who I dealt with at Dell to do that deal, we established a relationship of trust together.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was then. Fast forward several years, where I'm the CEO of this company I mentioned, SiteSpeed, which was this leader in video chat. We had great technology, but they brought me in to really commercialize it, make it a real business.
Yeah.
So we were a small little company, 30 people, funded by a small VC, venture capital fund out of Berkeley, so the Bay Area.
Yep.
And we were struggling. We were struggling. And 90%, I would say, of venture capitalists would have pulled the plug on us because we hadn't figured it out yet. And so we knew we were on life support. Then enter the opportunity where I was thinking about things, and I was thinking, you know, video chat might be really interesting for Dell because they had their webcams that were now being integrated into their laptops, their computers and all that. So they needed a video software. So I thought. So I went back to that relationship at Dell that was involved with the earlier Music Match relationship and deal. And largely because this person trusted me, believed in me and that relationship, he was very much an advocate for doing the deal. And ultimately, because of that relationship, I think without the relationship, it wouldn't have happened. That relationship led us to negotiate a major partnership, which ultimately brought us back from the fumes we were on into being a real viable company and having a major deal, which led to another major deal, which led to the M&A. So instead of the plug being pulled on us, we had a very exciting result that was great for everybody involved. And it was largely driven by the fact of sense of loyalty and wanting to help each other to do great things.
Well, that resonates a lot for me. I mean, you know, I've been privileged to have senior positions as legal counsel and CEO for an American company in Australia, and now I have my own business. And and it's funny, you know, at 52, it's only wisdom for me really has come with age, right? And so I have these 3 gates now. So I collaborate with a lot of people on training programs, and like you, I've invested in tech companies and luxury good companies and a watch company. And I've made mistakes along the way, right? I've done good things and I've made mistakes. Today, I have 3 gates. Before I collaborate, I need to respect who I'm working with. I need to trust them. And these are cumulative. They have to tick all these boxes. Respect, trust, and I have to like, right? So if any one of those 3, my gut feeling says no, I now don't do it. Even if it feels it goes again, because I did that in the past. I would collaborate with somebody because I respected them and I liked them, but I kind of chose to overlook the trust thing because my ego said do it, you know. And I think that comes with age. So in terms of, I'm really fascinated to find out about the whole entertainment media industry, right? Particularly now, because I have Disney Channel and I have Netflix and I do online live streaming, and I think I'm cool with all this sorts of stuff. But I think I wrote an article for Irish Tech News recently, and it was, now is going to be, I think, a time of real acceleration for certain technologies and media. I hope I'm right. World War II was a period of acceleration. The space race was. Do you think that's right? Do you think that this period will accelerate or change or pivot the whole media industry? What do you think?
Well, I certainly think that the answer is yes, in some very substantive ways that we're already seeing.
Okay.
So we already had these streaming wars that you mentioned, Netflix, Disney Plus, etc. So streaming has led us to cut the cord, or a whole new generation of cord nevers who never signed up for cable packages in the first place, because they realize that you can get exactly what you want for much less, right? So that's already happening. But certainly the pandemic times where everybody was quarantined and we were stuck in our homes, that led us to go to those services more and more for entertainment, for escape, for the passage of time. And we were stuck and unable to get out of our homes and continue to, and like live entertainment as an example. So when you think about that, I really see the in-home entertainment options, and I'll touch upon them briefly, having really accelerated trends that were happening already, but accelerating those trends to make them a reality sooner rather than later. On the out-of-home entertainment side, which has been decimated, and that means things like theme parks, music, concerts, festivals, movie theaters, all that. Similarly, there were certain trends that, for the most part, will go back to normal, I believe. I feel passionately about the out-of-home entertainment space, because I believe that people don't just live by digital alone. There is this human need to mingle and all that. We're seeing that right now, right? We're seeing it all the time. And then I'll touch upon movie theaters, because that's a little bit different.
I'm really interested about movie theaters, because I'd segue here, but I'm a huge James Bond fan, right? And I know the latest film, and I don't even know whether the name of it is going to resonate right now. I know it's called No Time to Die, right? And that was slated for release in April, and now November. I wonder if it's going to come out in November, but maybe we'll talk about that. But I love going to the movie theaters to watch big ticket movies,
Yes.
But back to your observations.
Well, I'll start with the out-of-home entertainment. I'll start with movie theaters. So even before the pandemic times, we were seeing significant challenges to the theater business, as you know. And so the local theaters, multiplexes, have become more and more directed toward the major mega franchise films that are event-driven films, which is typically for young audiences who, and young people like to congregate, and the movie theaters are a natural place for them to do so. So like that social aspect, I believe that the event films post-pandemic, once theaters open again, that audience will be there for the major event films. So I think that, I think your point about the title of the James Bond is an interesting one.
It is.
And I agree with you. I hadn't thought about before, but I think that the execs are thinking about that right now. But major event films will continue to flourish in theaters. But we've seen already in the pandemic times that theatrical release windows, which means the time that movies can be released out of theaters into homes and in other places, that what they call that window, which used to be about 90 days for first in theaters and then 90 days before they go into the home, right? For streaming or download or on demand, whatever. We've already seen that now in the pandemic, because people couldn't go to the theaters, where the major studios have a choice. They have their feature films that they've devoted tens of millions of dollars to. So what do? Do they shelve them indefinitely, or do they release them for in-home streaming? Well, and this has been a massive issue in Hollywood for decades, about these release windows. Well, for the first time now, you saw Universal Studios with the movie Trolls World Tour decided to close that window, release the movie for in-home streaming on the same date it would have in the theaters. So you could only find Trolls now at home, streaming at home. And so this was a major taboo that Universal decided to do. It's an experiment that the major studios have wanted to do for quite some time. So now they had the cover of the night of being able to do it now. And in the first 3 weeks, that experiment led to about $100 million in revenues driven by just U.S. on-demand streaming, or U.S. streaming. 100 million. So just as from an economic standpoint, the original Trolls in the United States grossed a total of about $150 million. When you look at the revenue splits in that business, about 60% overall would go to the studios. So let's say $80, $90 million of that 150. Well, when you look at the revenue splits on streaming side, it's 80% goes to the studio, 20% to streaming service. So if you gross, if it generated 100 million in 3 weeks for the new movie, and it's about the same number ultimately. And so the experiment it has led to a very interesting result, which is kind of what I expected, actually.
Yeah.
So I think that you will see a long way of answering the question of, I think event films will continue to be the bread and butter, and almost exclusively that's what's going to be in the out-of-home theater or out-of-home market. You'll see more family-oriented, family-friendly films like Trolls that will be which will go first or the same date into streaming on demand, and then you'll see more adult-driven stories, which already were going into the streaming platforms first, kind of forced out of the studios because the audiences like me. You're a younger man than I, so I won't mention you, but those will be even more so relegated to streaming services. So that's how I see that business. And then really quickly, I do think that live music, because of artist fan passion, engagement, and all that, I think that the live music scene ultimately will come back and be as big as it was before. So I'm a believer. I'm a huge consumer of music festivals, concerts. I believe that will be there. Theme parks, they're going to need to be reimagined, but it might be a better customer experience because it's like spacing will be different, things like that. Now in-home, on-demand streaming is accelerated because of the forces I told you. I think that esports, which is a big deal of young people who are watching others play video games or play, they're gamers watching gamers. Already a multi-billion-dollar industry that's accelerated. And I think maybe even older generations have been opened up to that and understand it's a real deal. And then immersive technology like virtual reality, augmented reality. There's been a long promise of that. And now there's been an opportunity for more people to try that because they've been stuck in home. So I think that, as well as the onset of 5G networks, which will make it better experiences, I think all of that will accelerate the pace of adoption for immersive entertainment.
I wonder how that will play out. I mean, for example, this whole, right now I spend so much of my time on Zoom or Crowdcast or StreamYard or sometimes Skype, and it's great, right? But it's pretty. Obviously the technology behind it's not basic, but it's basically you and me looking at each other, 2D, two-dimensional. I wonder if we're ever going to get to that place where we see 3D, or whether we, thought processes could be telepathically sent, or what's the word on the street as to how we're going to communicate going forward? Or is it just going to be sharper digitalization of what we're seeing now? Are we going to see anything radical?
Yeah, I think we are. In fact, I just wrote an article for USA Today, I think it was last week, which talked about musicians and different ways to virtually engage with your fans. And it wasn't just live streaming, although live streaming is really coming to its own. And that's one that I didn't mention, but live streaming, which doesn't replace the out-of-home concert experience as an example, but it augments it. It's another way for artists to engage. But it's not just live streaming. It is things like, there's a company I mentioned in there called Red Pill virtual reality out of Los Angeles. And what it enables people to do right now, today, is you can have a DJ as an example, and Diplo, and Diplo's live stream. He's playing live. And now Simon and your kids and me and my kids, we can together. We can be on stage with him, interacting actually with Diplo, not just in some goofy avatar kind of way, but actually as ourselves virtually. And interacting with him and interacting with each other and dancing with each other. This is through virtual reality, but it's fully interactive. It's almost like teleportation. And more of that. And there's a number of platforms. The names escape me right now, but I was researching it a little bit, where virtual conferences, virtual meetings, where it's going to be much more than telepresence and all that.
Wow.
it's going to be more of an immersive way to actually feel your body will feel like you're with each other, and you'll be able to have interesting engagements that is much more than what we're doing today. I think those virtual, and I think one theme of what we've learned through this pandemic is that although this is two-dimensional, it is much more effective than many people would have thought it was.
Absolutely.
And they were forced into adopting it.
Absolutely.
And they realize now that it can work for them and that they can be comfortable doing it.
That's a great point, because, as I said, I've written a couple of articles on, particularly, I'm interested in the interaction between human collaboration, right? And because there's a social context to that, right? So we're social creatures. So historically, most of the inventions, including technology inventions, have come about because people have been together in a room or a business, right? But it sounds counterintuitive to say that collaborative technologies, which are remote technologies, can go hand in hand with the social being, right? But Gartner has said, for example, that remote working is likely to go up from 30% to nearly 50%, right? And so that's the first thing. The second thing then is that, we are communicating online all the time right now. A lot of us who are doing this online, right? And it's not as scary or as painful as we thought, and it works, right? So, and it's interesting. I know a good friend of mine over here, a woman called Samantha Kelly, and she's called the Tweeting Goddess. She's highly acclaimed globally as a Twitter expert, right? And she has demonstrated. So she's kind of mentored me a bit, and she's demonstrated that you can actually. So I can now go onto Twitter and I can gauge whether somebody is being authentic, whether they're being too pushy, whether they're being inauthentic, whether they're a nice person but just trying too hard. And she feels, and I also spoke to Ted Rubin, another one of my guests on this program, who's the CMO of Fodify, and they feel that in some respects it's easier to trust somebody else online quicker than it is face-to-face, because you've already done the research about them before you meet them online. So that you've done some work, right, already before you get online. So it made me think, is it possible to actually trust somebody as quick or quicker online than it is face-to-face? What do you think about that? I mean, is there something in that?
Well, I certainly think that, I don't think that anything replaces the initial contact where you have physical interaction with somebody. That, whether it's going to be a handshake anymore, who knows, right? But I don't think anything replaces that. It establishes a certain level of trust if you hit it off. And I think that's right. I mean, here's the thing about what you just said. A lot of those times where you first meet somebody, it's an instantaneous thing. So you have an immediate reaction, a visceral reaction. Kind of what Malcolm Gladwell would say, the blink moment, right? But that's it. When you do something like you establish, and I've started to do this more, establish a first meeting because we've had to, like doing a video chat or a Zoom conference, something like this. It's not going to be a minute long, and so you get a chance to get to know the person. And what we're doing, being able to, and I know this from, I'll go back to my SiteSpeed days. The reason why I went to SiteSpeed, which was live video chat, I was running that company primarily out of my home in San Diego, even though it was a Berkeley-based company where my team was, because this is what we did. I'd fly up there, of course, once every 2 weeks maybe, but we would do this. So this was back in 2005. We believed that this is a wave that was coming, and this was, again, pre-Skype video, pre-Zoom and everything. The stat we always said was 90%, something like 90% of communication happens through the visual cues you have.
93%. I lecture in this. It's 93%.
Okay, well, there you go. So like Simon, you and I have exchanged a number of notes, and we've had some audio calls, but we've never done a video call before.
Absolutely.
And we have I would say, we have a different kind of connection now than we did that way. And people are much more focused by seeing each other and all of that.
No, that's a great point. So, for example, you're number 11 in these conversations, and I have another 5, right? And I don't know about you, but I won't forget these 11 conversations, because they've been intense, face-to-face, really precious conversations with no distractions. Whereas if I'd met you at a function or a conference or even in a social setting, there are distractions, aren't they? So I think this kind of almost entrenches that connection, because we're facing each other. I think there's real power in that. So just as we bring this conversation to an end, and I could actually talk to you for hours, because I find the whole media technology industry fascinating. If you were going to, before I get to the final question, in terms of leadership in the media entertainment industry, right? How do you think, without getting specific about, we're not going to talk about the whole Me Too stuff, but in response to this pandemic circuit breaker, which is changing dynamics, how do you think good leadership should or could be responding to this better? How do you think that leadership should respond to it better?
Well, I think first, the human factor is the most important in anything, I think, in any form of leadership. And so the first thing that media and entertainment leaders should do is focus on their teams and make sure, and really, hopefully they're empathetic and reach out to them and see how they're doing. And then it's the inspiring, and we have being very transparent about things. Okay, this hit us hard. We don't know exactly how we're going to solve this, but we're going to. We're going to, put our minds together, really focus on that, and come up with a game plan. So I think that there's the transparency, there's the empathy, there's all of that. And then ultimately bringing in the right people to be able to bring different perspectives. And so I'm a big believer in bringing in young people who just come from, their digital natives. They came from a different place than people like myself, who've been in the business for a long, long time, who we may have read a lot, and we do a lot of the things now, and we try to stay ahead of the curve, but we don't live with it in the same way, and we don't have the same brains as the young people do. So I think that it's bringing people together and all those kinds of pieces. And then it gets down to the obvious things like, be flexible, be tenacious. And this gets down to, I saw it back to that, like that site speed pulling of the plug scenario, where we almost had the company, but we wouldn't say die. We wouldn't say die. We never gave up. I had a great team of people, and we did what we could, which doesn't always work. But the more things that you put out there, the more likely it is that you will succeed and find a way. So I would say that, for leadership that I've seen work is that kind of human connection. That is real. And then that kind of understanding that you don't have all the answers, but you're willing to experiment and be flexible, and really be team oriented, and then never say die. Be tenacious, and just because I'm a huge believer in good old fashioned grit.
That sums it up perfectly. And I do programs around sales resilience and virtual deal making. I'm fortunate to do a lot of programs with the Irish government over here, and one of the things, and leadership programs, and one of the things I talk about is that it's so important for leaders of companies to tell the truth as much as they can corporately, right? Because if you don't tell the truth, if you don't, as you said, say, we don't have all the answers, we don't actually know what's going to happen, right? But we'll do our best through grit. If you don't tell that truth, employees aren't stupid. They will fill the gap, and they will invariably fill the gap with worry and anxiety, right? Which then undermines the leadership. So you might as well be honest as much as you can. So,
life is short, right? So why go through it any other way?
Exactly. Maybe the final question, I might change a little bit. So we're talking about, you mentioned Creative University, right? And so and we're both passionate about passing the message on. So if you were going to be talking to, say, the leader of a major media company, right? If you knew that this person, say this 21-year-old, was eventually in 20 years' time going to be the leader of a major media multinational, what would you say to them today to set them up for success, bearing in mind that technology is all going to change, for 20 years' time? What would you say to them? 2 or 3 things.
Yeah, I would say that relationships have always been fundamentally important to business success.
Yeah.
Like that Dell relationship I mentioned.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I would say that as people worry about how technology changes things and may make certain areas obsolete, what doesn't change is the human factor. So relationships and investing in that and authentically investing in that, and staying, if you do that early, that will serve you well over time, as long as you live up to, your authenticity. And it's thinking about the other person and how you can help them too. And, for lack of a better way of putting it, paying it forward too, and not always expecting something in return, but those kinds of investments of time and relationships will serve you well. So that's part of it. Absolutely. And then the other thing I would say is that really challenge yourself to be a generalist to a certain extent, to learn a lot of different areas and invest in understanding the technology, so that, and that means like in the media and entertainment space, if you hear of something new, and to hear of something new, you need to research that a little bit and stay on top of it and read and do those kinds of things. Get into the field, spend time with the entrepreneurs, but test the new services, test the new technology, learn that, so that you become not just a business person, but you become a practitioner of it. And so tech is transforming media and entertainment, always has. Now that curve is going up like this. And so being a media and entertainment exec and just understanding content is not enough. If you're a technologist and you're in the media tech space, understanding the technology is not enough. You have to understand the storytelling of it all. So being a generalist to understand enough of all of it, and then bringing in the right people and creating those relationships, not just as mentors, but as team players, because the best way I think to succeed in a career is to identify people early that you believe in and grow together.
That's perfect. With that, I've really enjoyed this chat, and I could talk for a week about all of this stuff, and I'd like to continue the chat offline some other time. But
of course, Simon.
How do people find out more about you, the company, the university?
Okay. So to learn more about my company, it's creative.media, and creative is CREATV.media. So CREATV.media. And if you go to creative.media, then you'll see on the upper, in the tabs, you'll see Creative University. And that's the portal. That's the hub exclusively for students who are interested in media and entertainment and tech. And so it's literally just kicking off. Cool. And I want to build something that is global, that helps people globally. This is not a US only sort of thing. And I promise one thing, that I'll bring in a lot of people who are really interested in the business and who are passionate and have the same kind of qualities that we've been talking about, who want to give back and help create the leaders of tomorrow in the media and entertainment.
I'll definitely share the link to the university when I post the videos out. And I'd love to see it develop over here in Europe. It'd be great. If I can help spread the word, I will. So it's been great chatting with you, and take care and keep in touch, please, Peter.
I've enjoyed it, Simon. Really good to see you.
And you. Bye-bye. Take care.
See ya.
See ya.